Although some men sometimes get involved, most of the time it's the girls who launch into creating exclusive content on the internet. I had never been into that kind of thing, nor had I had any fame on social media or anything like that, so when Lorena, my girlfriend, told me that she had got a new job, I never thought it would be anything to do with OnlyFans. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the truth is that there was a rather dark reality in her life that I couldn't have imagined in my worst nightmares. I remember that day like it was yesterday. It was a Wednesday morning and she was looking for a job after leaving her job at a post office, which took up 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, and worst of all, she was paid a pittance. However, Lorena had always been very skilled with computers. In fact, that year she had graduated in web development and was looking forward to venturing into her new field. But her curiosity, the same one that always allowed her to learn and try new things, would bring her some problems this time. At first, everything seemed to be going well. Lorena just told me that she had got a job and that we wouldn't be seeing each other as much as before. She said she didn't want to go into details, and honestly, I understood her, as she was a bit reserved and I knew I had to give her her space. Besides, I was in the middle of exams and I also had 1,000 things on my mind, so it wasn't difficult to get distracted. Before leaving the cafeteria where we were, Lorena insisted on paying for my coffee. I offered to keep separate accounts, but with a little smile, she told me she wanted to take care of it. That made me feel good, not because of not spending, but because it seemed that she was doing well, and that was the last time I saw her in almost 2 weeks. I know there are couples who see each other less often, but it was always different with Lorena. We saw each other almost every day, so feeling that emptiness was strange. Finally, I decided I should pay her a surprise visit. I didn't think there was another guy or anything like that. I trusted her. But when I went to her house with the spare key I had, what I found left me frozen. The decor had changed radically. In the middle of her living room, there was a pile of cameras and lights, and there was Lorena, dressed in lingerie and wearing more makeup than a Hollywood movie character. Lorena was paralyzed when she saw me, and in a panic she started yelling at me, asking what I was doing there. I replied that I had just stopped by to visit her because I was worried that we weren't seeing each other as much. At that moment, I was the one who got angry. Not because she had an OnlyFans account, but because she had lied to me. She had told me that she had got a programming job and that it took up all her time, and now it was clear that this was not the case. At first, she gave me the story that she was doing this in her spare time. But I knew Lorena, and I knew that she was hiding something big from me, and that made me very angry. As we stood there, I felt anger burning inside me, but she started to cry and apologize, promising that she would never lie to me again. She told me that she had her reasons, that it all made sense to her, but that she couldn't tell me. She asked me to trust her, but as I tried to process what was happening, I realized that she wasn't even paying attention to what I was saying. Instead of looking at me, she was smiling strangely and forcedly, talking to someone through the computer, as if what I said didn't matter. That's when doubt started to eat away at me. What was Lorena really doing? That was enough. Anger finally got the better of me. So I got up to leave because I really couldn't stand it for another minute. But suddenly I felt a sharp blow to the head. A metallic impact so forceful that it made me stagger. And before I knew it, I fell to the floor, seeing Lorena trembling and crying and with a frying pan in her hand. Darkness enveloped me, and when I woke up, everything hurt. I felt like a long time had passed since I had lost consciousness. I tried to move, but that was when I realized that I was tied to a chair. I didn't understand what was happening. When I looked up, Lorena was walking towards me, holding a huge knife in her hand. Her face was full of tears, and she was looking at me as if she were suffering. I tried to scream, but my mouth was taped shut, and at that moment, panic washed over me. I knew I was in one of those life or death situations, and I had no idea why. When he was in front of me, he raised the knife, and in a moment of tension, he stopped. I can't do this. I'm so sorry," he said to me, his voice breaking. Suddenly, Lorena took the tape off my mouth and told me that I needed to get out of there as soon as possible. With a frightened look, she asked me to call the police and alert her family. At that moment, the lights in her house suddenly went out and she screamed in terror, looking around nervously. The only light came from the computer, so she ran towards it and tried to disconnect it. Confused, I asked her what was going on here, and her answer changed everything. It turned out that what she was doing was not what I thought. That work was not from OnlyFans, and she was actually being used as a hostage. Lorena told me that weeks ago, while looking for a job in programming, she got bored and decided to browse the deep web for a little entertainment. She had been there before, but had never ventured so far. As I said, Lorena was always very curious, especially about the whole world of computing. This had led her to enter a net room, and what she saw terrified her. After that experience, her computer restarted by itself and the camera came on without her being able to turn it off, even after trying to format it. Shortly after all this, she received a message that left her frozen. In the message, there were photos of her and her family, her brothers leaving school, her mother arriving from work, and even images of me in my apartment. They are paying me to do live shows, but it's not like OnlyFans. It's called NoneFans and it operates on the deep web. If I don't go online for the live show, they'll kill my loved ones, she shouted at me. They told me I had to kill you, but I couldn't. And now that's going to bring me trouble, she confessed to me, her eyes filled with terror. Lorena, I won't let anything happen to you, I said, trying to reassure her. You're a good person and everything will be fine. I wish I could believe you, she replied, as she hugged me, sobbing. She was scared about what would happen to her family. Suddenly, we began to see shadows moving through the dark windows of her house. They were surrounding us. Suddenly, the windows exploded at the same time, and Lorena clung to me tighter than ever, as if it were her last embrace. Then, through the windows, terrifying guys wearing wild animal masks came in, and without a shred of mercy, one of them lunged at me, and before I could defend myself, he brutally beat me. While I was on the floor, another couple of guys lifted Lorena by the arms and took her away. Her screams echoed through the house as she begged me to look after her family and not to try to find her. As I lay there, the guy who had beaten me continued to kick me mercilessly, and when his cronies took Lorena away, the kicker stopped, turned around and walked off as if it were nothing to him. He showed no emotion. He just kicked me one last time before leaving me lying on the ground, crying and suffering for her. They left as quickly as they had arrived. The house was completely silent, and darkness enveloped everything. I felt desperate and broken and in more pain than I had ever been in my life. I tried to get my cell phone to call the police, but it was gone. The man must have stolen my phone while he was beating me. In desperation, I ran out into the street and rang all the doorbells in the block, but everyone turned off their lights and pretended not to hear. I screamed like a madman for help until finally someone opened the door and let me use their phone. When the police arrived, I told them the whole story, but they didn't quite believe me at first. I spent hours being considered a suspect in Lorena's disappearance. It was only when they checked the street security cameras and saw that I really wasn't lying that they finally cleared me. When Lorena's family found out everything, they confessed to me that she had made a strange phone call just the day before all this happened. She told them to go far away and not to try to look for her, not to ask questions, but that they were in real danger if they didn't leave as soon as possible. In the end, they decided to move away to look after the children. As I said, I never saw Lorena again. I have no idea what happened to her, but I'm still haunted by the fear that those kidnappers will make good on their threats and come for me. Sometimes I wish it would happen, just so I could see the faces of those who took her. When people hear OnlyFans, they usually think of beautiful girls sharing adult content to make money, but men can also upload content there, and I am one of those creators. My real name is Lucas Ruiz, and I am Cuban American, but on OnlyFans I am known simply as Luke. I have been sharing content on the platform for the past year, and thanks to it I have managed to pay off my student debt. I can't say I'm proud of doing this, but at least it helps me cover the bills and gives me extra to go out and have fun. Still, the downside of making money on this app is that it makes it difficult for me to get a normal job and date girls, as many don't want to date a guy who uploads content to OnlyFans. A while ago, I matched with a gorgeous 24-year-old girl on Tinder. I was too excited. We talked on the app for several weeks and finally decided to meet the following weekend. I must say it was my first date in years, so the butterflies in my stomach were real. Not only was she beautiful, but she was also an aspiring artist and had a great sense of humor. With all this, it was normal for me to be over the moon. For my part, I have never considered myself a model, but, according to many girls who have seen my photos or consume my content, I should give it a try instead of continuing with my business studies, but here I am, being an ordinary guy. Our meeting was to be in an elegant restaurant at 7 p.m. I knew she was a bit shy, so I arrived about 2 decades early to be prepared. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but I did arrive quite a bit earlier. I reserved a table at the back with a view of the river, looking for privacy so that we could chat in peace and enjoy the scenery. I put on a nice shirt, jeans, and boots, not too formal, but not scruffy either. Obviously, I made an effort to look good. However, when I looked at the clock and the minute hand pointed to 7 o'clock, she still hadn't shown up. Then the minutes passed and became hours. By 8:30, I was on my second starter and a couple of glasses of wine. I was feeling at rock bottom. I was annoyed at being stood up, but I wasn't going to let the evening go to waste completely. After a while, I decided that enough was enough, and I went home. The next day, I received a message from her apologizing for not being able to meet me. She said she had a family emergency and was unable to make it. As I was really interested in her, I decided to let the incident go, so we made another appointment. But the night before that second attempt surprise, she canceled on me once again. I was starting to get a little nervous about her insistent avoidance. We had been talking non-stop for almost a month, so I didn't understand why she was avoiding seeing me in person. Still, I kept trying to forge a real connection with her, but at the end of the second month, she vanished, leaving me hanging without warning. That hurt. Honestly, I felt like the fact that I was a creator on OnlyFans had affected our relationship. It was disappointing and quite painful for my ego. After it all went away, I decided it was best to focus on finding a normal job and leave OnlyFans behind. So even though I was still uploading things to help with expenses, I started to feel contempt for the platform. One night when I got back from work, I found an envelope in my mailbox. I hardly ever receive physical mail anymore, so I was surprised to see anything. I took it to my apartment, and when I opened it, I saw that there was some money and a USB stick. I didn't know who had sent it, as there was no return address. So out of curiosity, I connected the stick to my laptop. But when I saw what was on it, I was transfixed. On the USB stick were several of my OnlyFans videos, and in a separate folder were my photos and some of my social media accounts. But what shocked me most were some snapshots that I hadn't shared. They were candid photos of me at the supermarket, at the bank, or even running in the park. But the last image was a low blow. It was an intimate photo that I had sent to that girl, one that I had not published anywhere. All this left me feeling uncomfortable, as if someone were stalking me, but I didn't want to alarm the police. I thought it wasn't that serious. However, a few days later, another envelope appeared in my mailbox. As soon as I saw it, I knew it was from the same sender as last time, but this time, in addition to the money, there were photos of me in my apartment. They had clearly been taken from outside through the window. That feeling of being watched filled me with panic, and I didn't know what to do or who to turn to. I realized that the fact that I lived on the first floor might have made things easier. That confirmed my suspicions that someone was stalking me. I wanted to go to the police, but something inside me told me that it would be better to wait and gather more evidence. So after that unpleasant experience, I decided to go back to Tinder, only to realize that the girl's account no longer existed. She had deleted it. Just as I was about to throw the envelope in the trash, a small note fell to the floor, and all it said was, "It was finally nice to see you in person." I'm not going to lie, I felt a little terrified. I thought the photos they had sent me were fake and that someone was playing a joke on me, but I couldn't understand why someone would do something like that. Even so, I tried to get on with my normal life, but always keeping one eye open in case a stalker turned up. The most disturbing thing was that I had no idea what this person looked like. One night, I was coming home late from a job interview and I was feeling great. My confidence was sky high and I was sure I would get the job. So I decided to do some exercise and go out for a run. I went to the park and started my usual route, but it was too dark and I had to use my phone's flashlight to light the way. Besides, there were hardly any people around, which didn't help at all with the unsettling nervousness that had set in since I started receiving those packages. After running for about an hour, I returned to my car and sat down in the driver's seat, trying to catch my breath. But I had no idea what I was about to experience. Suddenly, I felt a tight rope around my neck. Someone was in the back seat of my car and was trying to kill me. The parking lot was deserted. I had only been there a minute and there was no one around to help me. At that moment, I did what anyone would do. I tried to fight against the rope, but it was impossible. My attacker was surprisingly strong, but despite everything, I managed to stammer, "Who are you? Please let me go." "Oh, so you don't remember me? I guess that makes you a candidate for death," replied a woman behind me in a hoarse voice, and that made me panic. I felt like I was going to pass out, so I knew I had to act fast or it would be the end of me. I still had my car keys in my hand, so I wouldn't hesitate to use them. Trying to get out of this mess, I extended the headrest and tried to use the keys to hurt her. And fortunately, at that moment the rope loosened and the woman let out a scream. At least it had worked. I immediately started coughing. I was almost out of breath and I touched my neck, which was hurting a lot. I ran out of the car and realized that it wasn't that the woman was right behind me, chasing me. It was at that moment that I really saw her and I could see that she had tricked me. The woman who was trying to kill me was older, maybe about 50. She looked terrible. She was wearing ripped jeans and a dark t-shirt. Her blonde hair was messy and she had dark circles under her eyes that made her look awful. When I attacked her, the car key went straight into her eye, which was bleeding, and now she was still shouting at me as she tried to cover the wound. It was a truly horrible scene. Her unkempt appearance and bleeding eye made her look like a real zombie. Instead of running towards the street, I decided to go back to the park. I knew every corner of that place, so I quickly found a safe place to hide. From my refuge, I took out my cell phone and called the police to tell them what had happened, and they informed me that they would arrive any moment. While I waited hidden behind a tree, I could hear the woman shouting my name, insulting me and daring me to come out. Seriously, those were the most terrifying 15 minutes of my life. Until finally the police arrived and managed to arrest that crazy woman. After arresting her, they escorted me back to my house and informed me that she was suspected of committing 2 murders and that I could have been her 3rd victim. It turns out that she was stalking different OnlyFans content creators, both men and women, and then killing them. If I hadn't reacted and stabbed the crazy woman, I'm sure this would be talked about in a very different way. The officer told me that it seemed that she was mentally unbalanced, perhaps under the influence of drugs, or maybe she was simply a psychopath enjoying taking innocent lives. That night, without thinking twice, I decided to delete my OnlyFans account forever. I didn't want to keep playing with fire and risk something like this happening to me again. Since then, I have stayed away from that platform and have been leading a completely normal life. I work as an assistant in an accounting office, and although I don't earn as much, at least now I live in peace. In September 2020, I, a 20-year-old Australian university student, decided to open up on Reddit to tell something that had me terrified. It all started when I uploaded some intimate photos to OnlyFans, and from there my life became a real chaos. I started receiving harassment, which intensified to the point of starting to experience disturbing situations on the internet and becoming a real threat to me. I only felt safe enough to tell my story using a disposable and anonymous account, and mentioned that the police were already dealing with the guy who was harassing me. Although it was a relief, I made it clear that they should have paid attention to my complaints much earlier. From the beginning, there were warning signs that nobody wanted to see. The whole horror began when I returned to my parents' house after the summer holidays. I was so excited because they had adopted a new puppy, that joy of meeting a new furry friend. Although, let's face it, puppies are naughty and a headache sometimes. One night I woke up to the whining of my new puppy at the back door. We were in the process of teaching him to go outside, but the poor thing still didn't quite get it. I got up, put on some slippers, and went downstairs to take him out. It was very late, around 2 a.m., and there didn't seem to be anyone around, but I soon realized that I wasn't alone. Suddenly, I saw a shadow inside a car. I could feel that someone was watching me, but in the darkness I couldn't make out their face. I got a chill, but I thought maybe I was exaggerating. It was only when I went back inside and the car started its engine and followed me down the driveway. I can't describe how terrified I was. Even though I was so close to home, going out alone at that time of night made me feel completely vulnerable. So I ran inside and locked the door, keeping an eye out in case it tried to break in. But thank God it didn't. It seemed to turn around and leave. The next morning, after a horrible and anxiety-filled night, I found an envelope in my parents' mailbox. Inside was $20 in cash and my OnlyFans username. I kept thinking about how someone could have found my parents' address. However, after giving it a lot of thought, I finally came to the conclusion that it all started when I shared my Amazon wish list. Although both OnlyFans and Amazon say that their security systems are good and prevent this kind of problem, the truth is that they are not so secure when it comes to third-party sellers, who are not subject to the same laws. I had no idea how they had found my address, but I was almost certain that some third-party seller had sold my information. I didn't know if they did it through bribery or threats, but it seemed the most logical reason. After that, when I returned to the university city, I stopped uploading content, but somehow my stalkers managed to track me down. The mere thought that someone was after me and capable of going that far to stalk me kept me scared all the time, so I could no longer enjoy my life as I had before. Every time I used my phone or went online, the fear of receiving a new threatening message stalked me. So I went from being a happy and carefree student to living in constant alert, wondering if I could ever free myself from this nightmare. With so much insecurity about everything that was happening, I decided to close my OnlyFans account and open a YouTube channel. I thought it would be safer to share my life that way. My first exciting project was going to be a day of shopping at a local mall, but when I got to my car, I found it a complete mess. My vlogging camera had been stolen, but strangely enough, nothing else had been taken. I know it was my fault for leaving it there. I had used it the night before, and as I live in a safe area, I didn't think it would be in danger. But what really worried me was that the camera was stored in the glove compartment, and it had an SD card full of photos and videos that I hadn't published yet. It was as if someone knew exactly what was there and went straight for it. As you can imagine, my nerves went through the roof. But the strangest thing was yet to come. That same day, I decided to talk to the security staff at my building so they could check the camera footage. They agreed without any problem. But what I discovered there was even more terrifying than anything I had experienced so far. In the images, I saw a guy destroying my car while ignoring all the other cars in the parking lot. I also realized that I was being the target of much more targeted harassment than I had imagined, because after stealing my camera, this guy walked around my duplex and stopped right in front of my window. My room faced the street, and since my blinds were broken, it was easy to look in. I had a curtain, but it didn't cover the whole window, so that guy could see me sleeping for over an hour. I have no idea why he didn't try to break in, but thank God he didn't. In the end, I managed to get my camera back in a secondhand shop near my house, but the memory card was missing. I'm sure my stalker kept it as a trophy or something. I was completely terrified by everything that had happened, so I finally decided to move. I hoped that my stalker hadn't followed me, because in the end, the police never found him. So to this day I live in fear that one day he might find me, and God only knows what such a deranged person might be capable of. I guess many of you are already familiar with OnlyFans, and if there's anyone who says they're not, they're probably lying. But in case anyone still doesn't know, OnlyFans is a website where both men and women upload photos and videos for their subscribers in exchange for money. And yes, the photos are usually quite racy, with little clothing or even nudity. But the interesting thing is that all kinds of fetishes are catered for here too, from things like hands and hair to photos of feet. My real name is Frederick Mears, and I once had an OnlyFans account that was a real success, although it wasn't really mine, and it turns out that all this brought me attention that would end up ruining my life. It all started when I started as a spectator, simply looking at the accounts of several girls and paying for their exclusive photos. One day, when I wanted to buy another subscription, I realized that my card was empty. I was stunned to think how much money I had spent. At that moment, a revelation came over me. This place is a gold mine, but the big question was how I was going to take advantage of it. To be honest, I'm not very good looking and I didn't want to make myself stand out. But just as I was stuck in my thoughts, my sister walked by and a really crazy idea came to me. I decided to take some casual photos of her and open a fake account pretending to be her. I created an account that only published photos of feet and hands, so I wouldn't need to go out or worry about my image, and since we both had very similar skin color, I could take photos of myself if necessary. Once I set up the account, it was an immediate success. People loved the photos of feet, hands, and even knees. The funny thing was that nobody knew that they were actually my photos. To my surprise, the account was more successful than I expected, and I started earning a lot of money fast, which made my family suspicious. But as I was bringing money into the house and giving things to my sister, they decided not to ask too many questions. I felt a little less guilty thinking that somehow what I was doing benefited him. However, all that glitters is not gold. Problems soon started to appear. At first I thought I could handle any strange situation that might arise, but I never imagined that things would get so intense. It all started with an apparently innocent message from a guy who wanted photos of my feet. I accepted without thinking, seeing him as a potential customer. The user was new, and as long as he paid, it was no problem. But over time, his messages started to get weird, and his requests started to change. At one point, his messages became increasingly aggressive, and what was supposed to be funny became a little scary. He said things like he wanted to eat my feet, that he wanted to tear them off and display them in his house as trophies. At first, I didn't think much of it, but I got scared as soon as he mentioned my name. "Thanks for the photos, Frederick," he said, and I froze. How did he know my name? And how did he know I wasn't the girl I said I was? At that precise moment, I knew it was time to close all tabs in the account. But then I received a message on WhatsApp. It was a voice message that said, "Do you really think you can scam me? I know everything about you. I know what you do, and what's worse, I know where you live. Keep calm. I'm not angry. In fact, I'm not interested in your sister's feet. I want yours. I'm on my way to visit you." My heart stopped. I jumped up and began to close the doors and windows like a madman. My sister was at home, but my parents were not, and I didn't want to put them in danger. I took a knife from the kitchen and ran to my room, completely terrified, thinking that maybe this was just an empty threat, but I couldn't risk it. Within seconds, I received another voice message. "I can still see you, Frederick. I'm getting closer and closer. How about we make it a little more interesting? Turn off your webcam. It will be a little more difficult for me to find you." My heart sank when I heard that. Of course, that meant he had been spying on me. This guy was a hacker. I disconnected the webcam instantly, and just as that happened, someone started knocking on the door. "Camilla, don't open it," I shouted to my sister, but by the time I went down, it was too late. My sister had opened the door. To my relief, it wasn't the psycho, but my sister's boyfriend. As soon as he came in, I closed the door again, feeling a little calmer now. I decided to go back to my room and try to calm down a bit. Camilla's boyfriend was tall and strong, so I figured he could defend us if anything weird happened. Minutes later, with no more messages coming through, everything seemed to have calmed down. I thought the stalker was just trying to scare me, so I turned on the TV and started watching a series on Netflix, trying to regain my composure. I was feeling a little calmer when I felt the door to my room slowly open. I turned around and saw Camilla and her boyfriend come in. "Hi guys, how's it going?" I said. But before I could finish my sentence, Camilla's boyfriend appeared behind me, grabbed me and covered my mouth. At that moment, Camilla approached him with her cell phone and put it close to his mouth. Then the guy sent a voice message that made my blood run cold. "I told you I was coming for you, little Frederick." When he finished sending the message, my phone started ringing, and to my horror, it was the same voice as the stalker. So my sister knew what she was doing. Were they trying to teach me a lesson? "Identity theft, Frederick, that's not very nice. Do you think those little gifts you gave me would hide what you do from me?" And with that, Camilla squeezed my feet. "I don't think I'm going to do this," said Edward, her boyfriend. "I told you I'd take your feet off. You think I'm lying to you?" At that point, I felt the cold metal of the knife close by, and my heart began to beat like crazy. Was he really going to do something like that? You know, Fred, I'm not really interested in the photos, but there are dangerous people on the deep web who are interested in your feet, and guess what? They want them. Camilla smiled mercilessly. "Bro, you're not the only one willing to bend the rules a little to make a lot of money. The difference is that you're still in diapers." As she said that, my sister began to calmly cut my foot. The pain was indescribable. I felt every deep movement, and yet she was doing it so slowly that it was even more unbearable, watching the blood start to come out everywhere. I tried to scream, but my mouth was covered. I didn't know what to do, and with each blow of pain, I wondered if they would ever stop, if I was really going to get out of this. The situation was becoming more and more terrifying, and the agony was still present, but I had less and less energy to fight. Finally, I closed my eyes, letting myself go little by little until I passed out. When I came to, I was in my bed. Camilla and her boyfriend were in front of me, and somehow I was starting to think that it had all been a terrible dream. "Hey, you finally woke up, Fred. You're looking a lot better," said my sister's boyfriend. In an instant, I lifted the sheet to look down, seeing that my feet were only wrapped in bandages. It was then that I understood that not only would my feet be scarred, but I would also be scarred emotionally forever. They didn't cut them off completely, but the level of physical and psychological torture that my own sister was capable of inflicting would leave an indelible mark on me forever. "Hey, relax. You'll be fine," she said. "You have to understand that what I did was out of necessity, so that this situation doesn't happen again. Of course, this is for having pretended to be me and published my photos without my consent. From that day on, I strove to live an honest life. I focused on my computer and saved everything I could in the hope of escaping from my sister. When they returned, my parents asked me how the accident had happened, but my sister interrupted them, telling them that, because of my clumsiness, I had put my feet in a small cave where some wild animals lived, and that luckily it was only a few small marks. She acted as if it were nothing, and I didn't want to talk about it either. From that moment on, I felt condemned to live in fear, a life where every loved one could be in danger because of my sister. I know what I did was wrong, but nothing can justify the nightmare I went through at that moment. And all I aspired to is to find some peace, although it seems that is something I lost a long time ago. I never thought my life would take such a dark turn because of something that started out as a simple idea to earn some extra money. It all began when I decided to open an OnlyFans profile. Yes, I know it may sound controversial, but at the time I was desperate. Normal jobs didn't give me enough to pay the bills, and someone suggested I try my luck on that platform. At first, I felt uncomfortable, as is normal. But little by little I loosened up, and after a while I got used to it. I uploaded photos, videos, and even interacted with my subscribers. I know there is a lot of stigma surrounding this platform, and I myself felt that prejudice. But then I realized it was a good opportunity to make extra money, and it really wasn't as bad as people said. After all, you didn't have physical contact with your subscribers, it was all just digital content. The thing is, everything was going well until he showed up. I didn't recognize him at first. He called himself Carlos on the platform, and his profile seemed normal. He was kind, respectful, and always left flattering comments. I liked talking to him because he wasn't like the other guys who just wanted to get off on it. He seemed genuinely interested in me. Over time, we started talking more often, even outside of OnlyFans. He would tell me about his life, and I would tell him about mine. I never mentioned my past, of course, because I didn't want to relive it. I had been in an abusive relationship for several years, which left terrible psychological and emotional scars. But he knew exactly how to manipulate me. One day, Carlos suggested we meet in person. He told me he lived in another city, but that he would come to mine just to meet me. At first, I refused. I was always careful with that kind of thing, but he insisted so much, and I was flattered. I thought he was someone I could trust. After all, we had been talking for a while now, and I thought it wouldn't be so bad to give him a chance to get to know me. So we agreed to meet in a cafe, a public place, so that I would feel safe. But when the day finally arrived and I walked through the door of the cafe, my heart stopped. It wasn't Carlos. It was him, my ex. The same guy who had mistreated me for years, the one who left me with physical and emotional scars that still hadn't healed and were unlikely to do so. I couldn't believe it. I was paralyzed. He approached with a smile that made my blood run cold. "Hello, darling," he said, as if nothing had happened between us. I tried to get up, but he grabbed my arm tightly. "Don't go, we're supposed to meet, aren't we?" His words were gentle, but his tone was clearly threatening. His name was Vincent, and he forced me to remain seated while he spoke, reminding me of things from the past, things that I had tried to forget for a long time. Vincent told me that he had been following me since I left his house, that he knew everything I had done, even the OnlyFans thing. And then I understood. He had subscribed to my profile just to get close to me again. Mez said she couldn't believe how low I had sunk, and that in the end she wasn't wrong when she told me I wasn't a slut. That hurt like a fist in the stomach, which was exactly what he always said to me whenever he came home drunk and hit me. After a while, he told me he wanted to go somewhere else, somewhere more private. I refused, obviously, but he insisted, quickly showing me a gun he had in his other hand. "I don't want to make a scene here," he said, and his voice sounded so cold that I knew I had no choice. He led me by the arm to the exit of the restaurant, and although I tried to signal to the other diners, the truth is that nobody paid any attention to me. They were all too busy with their own business. I cursed myself 1,000 times for having accepted this invitation, for not having suspected even a little, knowing what Vincent was capable of. He took me to an empty apartment, one he had rented just for this. When we went inside, I tried to calm down, to think of a way to escape, but he was always one step ahead. He pushed me against the wall and started to say horrible things to me, things that I don't want to repeat. I tried to reason with him, but all I achieved was to make him more furious, until finally he took out the gun and pointed it at my face. "If you can't be mine, you won't be anyone's," he said. And without hesitating for a moment, he pulled the trigger. But the bullet didn't fire. Vincent looked at the gun in confusion and pulled the trigger again, but it didn't fire either. At that moment, something inside me was activated. I don't know if it was fear or the survival instinct, but I reacted. I took advantage of the distraction of the moment and kicked him in the groin with all my strength, then ran towards the door. He tried to grab me, but I managed to get away as best I could and ran down the stairs without looking back. As I did so, I heard his screams and his curses, but I didn't stop. I ran as fast as I could, leaving my high heels behind until I found someone on the street and asked them to call the police. By the time they arrived, he had already left. The apartment was empty, and there was no sign of him, but the police took my statement. I really thought they would send him to prison, but they only arrested him for a couple of days and then released him. It turns out that they didn't have enough evidence to incriminate him. It didn't surprise me too much. Vincent was a guy with money, and his lawyer was one of the most renowned in the city, so he knew how to use his tricks to get him released. The officers just told me to be careful, to change my routines, not to expose myself so much on social media. But how could I do that? OnlyFans was my livelihood, and he already knew everything about me. Since then, I live in fear. I changed city, phone number, even my name on social media, but I know he's out there, waiting for the moment to attack me again. Sometimes when I'm alone, I feel like he's watching me, and although I've tried to move on, that experience scarred me forever. Now I know that danger can come from where you least expect it, even from someone who seems nice on the internet. Based in Richmond, Texas, Melissa Rojas, a 33-year-old Instagram influencer and freelance model, led a life that many could only imagine. With more than 2 million followers on her social networks, Melissa earned 6 figures thanks to a host of sponsorships and collaborations. Under the pseudonym Luna Bell, her list of followers included celebrities such as Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, Snoop Dogg, and Meek Mill, making her one of the world's most famous influencers as of August 2020. Like many of her colleagues, the discovery of OnlyFans gave her an exciting new opportunity to connect more closely with her huge fan base, as well as opening up a potentially massive source of income. However, her father, Roberto, had a different perspective on his daughter's success, arguing that the excessive attention she received brought more problems than benefits. We always kept her out of the public eye. Not even her closest friends knew her real name. Everyone called her Luna. So for safety reasons, I had to move her 3 times for my own fears, Roberto said last year. Having so many people following her scared me, not only because of the admiration, but also because some of them were obsessed. It definitely wasn't healthy. So, at around 4 p.m. on Sunday, August 29, 2020, when Roberto hadn't heard from Melissa in almost 48 hours, he decided to go to her apartment in Cortland to see how she was doing. He knocked on the door, but there was no answer. He took out his phone and dialed her number, feeling like he could almost hear the phone vibrating somewhere in the house. That's when he heard noises inside. He hadn't heard from his daughter in days, and no one was answering the door, so he wondered who was moving around inside. Roberto felt a chill down his spine. Something was terribly wrong, so without thinking twice, he walked away and kicked the door bolt. The blow echoed, and the door flew open. The scene that met his eyes when he entered broke his heart instantly. There was his beloved daughter lifeless at the bottom of the stairs. The apartment was a mess. Everything was in disorder, and there was lipstick graffiti all over the walls. Just as he was about to read some of the messages, he heard a noise coming from upstairs. In the midst of all that madness, Roberto thought for a moment that his daughter might have fallen down the stairs and suffered a fatal injury. But on hearing strange noises upstairs, adrenaline pushed him to run there as fast as he could. Upon arriving, what he saw was even more terrifying. A man was lying on the floor, choking in a pool of his own blood, with a hideous knife stuck in his throat as life was slipping away. Roberto quickly demanded answers, but it was too late. The man died just after he entered the room. Despite the horror of the situation, those questions would not haunt him for long, and after calling 911, he began to look at the lipstick graffiti scrawled everywhere. "I was used for money," read one. "I should have stayed in Florida," read another. The last graffiti Roberto read made his blood run cold. "I wish I had never loved her." "I feel sorry for the owner and the family." He couldn't go on. Those words were proof enough that his worst nightmares were coming true. Melissa's killer turned out to be a 34-year-old guy from Florida, A certain Kevin Accordo whose obsession with her was so insane that he managed to track her down, take her life, and then, in a horrific twist, end his own. The guy had no criminal record in his home state, but after the investigation, the police set about finding out if he had a history of mental health problems. "I have no idea how she found her," said Roberto, full of frustration. "I tried to protect her as much as possible. She didn't even let her friends know where she lived." They still couldn't understand how or when she arrived in Texas, a mystery that unfortunately deepened with each new question. News of the tragedy spread like wildfire, reaching the ears of Canadian rapper Tory Lanez, who paid tribute on social media, posting, "Rest in peace, Queen." However, many tributes barely mentioned the circumstances of her death. "She was extremely cautious," said Janetta, Melissa's mother, "but sadly someone managed to stalk her and kill her." It is shocking and disgusting to think that Kevin Accordo, with his unhealthy obsession, was able to find and kill such an innocent young woman. This only confirmed that Roberto's concerns were more than justified. Despite all his efforts to keep his daughter safe, the task was too much for him compared to the determination of her stalker. Furthermore, the fact that a guy without great computer skills could obtain her address raises many questions. Some have speculated that Accordo may have obtained Melissa's billing information to discover her real name and address, which highlights the fact that platforms like OnlyFans have to work much harder to guarantee the privacy and security of their content creators. For now, the truth is that perhaps the dangers of having a public online life outweigh any financial gain it might offer. It is certainly a warning about the shadows lurking behind that glamorous digital world. Sometimes, to shine online, you pay a price that many are not willing to bear. In the vast universe of OnlyFans, where passions can cross the line of reason and intimacy is tinged with shadows, connections can be taken more seriously than we imagine. There they met, two different but irresistibly intriguing characters. Samantha, a very pretty girl with an adventurous spirit, always looking for new experiences, was attracted to Javier from the first message he sent her. And Javier, with his charming personality and charisma, captured her attention and made her laugh from the very first moment. They met on this platform, where the private and the intimate intertwine in a surprising way, and their relationship flourished in this very particular environment, where boundaries were blurred and authenticity was expressed without a filter. Samantha shared her art with Javier, captivating him with her creativity. He, in turn, made her laugh with his sharp humor and sincere compliments. Their virtual conversations were filled with laughter, dreams together, and promises of a future full of love. As the weeks went by, what began as a simple connection became something deeper. They soon decided to leave the digital realm and meet in person. So Samantha, her heart beating like a drum, decided to fly to the city where Javier lives, full of excitement and nervousness, and their first meeting was like a fairy tale. Their eyes met, and the chemistry they felt through the screen came to life. They walked hand in hand through the vibrant streets of New York, letting themselves be carried away by the joy of finally being together. "I can't believe we met on OnlyFans," Samantha said with a laugh that lit up her face. "Who would have thought it, right?" Javier replied, squeezing her hand gently and laughing as if he had won the jackpot. Their love story unfolded as they toured the city, filled with laughter and stolen kisses. However, as time went by, Samantha began to notice something strange. The initial euphoria of their relationship began to fade, and suspicion began to nest in her mind as she noticed that Javier spent a lot of time on his phone, absorbed in conversations that did not include her. One night, while they were sitting in a cozy cafe, she couldn't take it anymore and asked him, "Javier, are you okay? I feel distant lately." He hesitated, then sighed and replied, "It's nothing, love. I'm just dealing with stress at work." Samantha wanted to believe him, although a small doubt was still buzzing in her head. However, what she didn't know was that the truth was about to be revealed. exposing an elaborate web of lies. Suddenly, her heart sank as she read some messages that left her frozen. He had been talking to several girls, making promises of love and affection that he had never made to her. A mixture of disbelief and rage invaded her, and without thinking twice, she threw the phone to the side and faced him. "How could you do this, Javier? What's wrong with you?" she asked, stunned and hurt. It wasn't just about her. He had been playing with the feelings of several girls at once. As Javier searched for the right words, the castle of trust they had both built together crumbled like a misplaced playing card. "How could you do this to me?" Samantha repeated, her voice trembling with pain while Javier, cornered, tried to justify the unjustifiable. "It's not what you think, Samantha. I can explain," he said, desperate. "How could you, Javier?" she replied, increasingly furious. "How could you betray me like that?" Tears began to run down her cheeks, echoing her sadness. "I'm sorry, really," murmured Javier, unable to hold her gaze. The atmosphere was charged with emotion, and the distance between them felt like an ocean. The relationship was hanging by a thread. While Samantha faced the anguish of betrayal, the place where they met, a platform that had been a symbol of connection, became a reminder of how fragile everything can be. Days turned into weeks, and although the wound was slow to heal, Samantha, strong and determined, began to rebuild her life, casting off the chains of deceit she had been dragged into. Her story, once a tale of love, became a poignant reminder of how sometimes digital connections can be treacherous. Meanwhile, Javier, beset by remorse, sank into a spiral of self-pity. Loneliness engulfed him, increasingly aware that he had lost the only person who had truly loved him. He tried to contact Samantha, sending her messages full of regrets and empty promises of change. But she had decided to move away, knowing that those words were just empty echoes. One fateful night, driven by despair, Javier went to the place where it had all begun, hoping to find the light he had lost. But Samantha was not there. Tormented by memories, as nostalgia enveloped him like a heavy blanket, despair took hold of his mind, and in a moment of madness, he made a tragic decision, convinced that without Samantha, his life had no meaning. He said goodbye to this world, leaving a note that whispered his regret and pain, questioning his actions and wondering if she could ever forgive him. The next day, Samantha received the news of the tragedy. Her heart would break once again, not for Javier, but for the life that had been extinguished because of selfish decisions. In a heartbreaking twist, she found herself mourning not only the betrayal she had suffered, but also the life that had been lost, feeling the weight of guilt that did not belong to her. Through her tears, she understood that human connections can be beautiful and destructive, and that a simple promise can drag the most innocent souls into darkness. In an act of painful reflection, she decided to dedicate her next art exhibition to the light and shadows of digital love. Her works became a tribute to Javier, a representation of the beautiful and tragic balance between connection and betrayal, a reminder that even in today's virtual labyrinth, the decisions we make can have devastating consequences. Samantha painted each stroke resonating with a profound message. Sometimes love can be a dangerous place, where vulnerability meets manipulation, and where it is crucial to remember the importance of authenticity and sincerity. With each painting, she invited others to reflect on their own connections, warning of the dark market where illusions often outweigh reality. In her pain, she found the purpose of sharing her story with the world, turning her personal tragedy into a warning beacon for those who seek authenticity in the superficiality of digital connections.